Okay, here we go. I promised to do a video on different gene mutations. So tonight I'm just going to talk about some of the basics and share where I believe lifestyle can change the way that genes express. And actually, this is something that I will be talking about, epigenetics and how lifestyle can affect gene mutations within my PhD that I'm doing. Okay, here we go. I promised to do a video on this. I keep getting a double whammy every time I go on YouTube. So hopefully you can still hear this. So yeah, so it's something that I'm really passionate about. For those of you that know about the Coming Alive formula, we've obviously been working with hundreds of children all around the globe that have got heavy metal toxicity, leaky gut, and lots of mineral imbalances. And so really the reason we even got talking about genes was to try and understand, after our research study, of why do so many children have heavy metal toxicity and leaky gut and all different mineral deficiencies. And it was really interesting because every time we went to the root cause of the root cause of the root cause of the root cause, you know, we ended up getting somewhere else. And, you know, the whole reason why we're talking gene mutations is because there were some common factors in children that we have tested. And many of the children had MTHFR, and my own children have many different gene mutations, which actually affect methylation, detoxification, and also neurological as well. So what I wanted to talk about tonight really is a little bit about some of those gene expressions and actually the things that we can do that basically lifestyle can affect the way that the genes express. So first of all, if I can click on here, before we get going, let's just cover off a couple of things. So our bodies, and I talk about this a lot, are made up of trillions of cells. You know, like our gut is made up of trillions of bacteria and pathogens, our bodies are made up of trillions of cells, each containing our genes. So genes are segments of DNA that contain the code for basically a specific function of the body or a protein, and mainly enzymes that basically create a specific function of the body. So a gene consists of enough DNA to code for a protein, and we inherit basically one gene from our mother and one gene from our father. So from our mother is the egg, and from our father is the sperm, and we inherit one gene from each of our parents. So where people get confused when we're talking about one gene, two gene, we all get one gene from each of our parents. Okay. And basically some of the most common gene mutations that are talked about are MTHFR, COMT, BDR, MAO, MTR and MTRR. Now there are many more, and I am going to do more of a series in this because I could talk about this for hours. I've done 3 different training programs on different gene mutations and epigenetics, and obviously I'm doing my PhD. And I'm also running a health practice where we do testing for metal toxicity and also leaky gut. So, you know, my knowledge evolves constantly. So every single time I learn something, I try and put videos out just to basically help patients and help people that are in my following. So first of all, before I get going, I want to give you a little bit about some of these gene mutations. Now, Dr. Ben Lynch, who wrote the book Dirty Genes, talks about different profiles and personalities to do with different gene mutations. And with MTHFR, he says some days you feel blue and depressed, while other days you're anxious. On good days, your focus is great and you get stuff done. And on bad days, you have anxiety. Or you may get temper, headaches, or you may just feel grumpy. After eating a salad, you tend to feel great, but you've never paid attention to that because after all, it's just a salad. And then he talks about COMT, and you can get a slow COMT gene, or you can get a fast COMT gene. Now, basically, he talks about if you've got a slow COMT, you know, you're probably cracking away at many different projects, you know, somebody that gets lots of stuff done. And he also says, after tossing and turning, I'm trying to read it from the book for you so that you can just hear what he says. You finally doze off, dreaming about tomorrow's tasks. Tomorrow arrives. He says, coffee is needed. You're off and running. So always on the go. With a fast COMT gene, he talks about, you know, jumping from one task to another. It's hard to get much done. Friends have suggested that you might have ADHD. What else? Yes, pretty much that one. And then I'm trying to do it in order of what I've put on here. MAO. Now this is interesting because my kids have got this. Often people are addicted to carbs, and you probably don't feel great after eating them. Now we have the carb conversation with many people, because actually what you're going to find when you talk about different gene mutations is also that it links with probably conversations that we've had to do with different mineral imbalances and metal toxicity. And in a second, you'll realize why. He also says you're sick of gaining weight, but you're fed up, stuck in the same pattern. You want to avoid, you don't want to be on antidepressants, but you feel like you can't keep going this way. That's with an MAOA, so a fast, but you can also get a slow. So easily startled, quick to become anxious and irritated. You can become aggressive and then feel bad because of overreacting. We see this in so many children. And then I'm just going to go on MTR. One second. Let me tell you with the MTR and MTRR, they basically affect methylation, which is very similar to MTHFR. Now, most people have heard about MTHFR, but they haven't necessarily heard about other different gene expressions. Now, most of them affect inflammation, oxidative stress, affect the detoxification pathways. And like I said, there's many more gene mutations other than what I've put on the screen here. Now, the one that most people have heard of is MTHFR. And what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you a DNA report that basically is from a raw extract of DNA data. So basically, if you get DNA tested, you get raw data, which basically is a list of code. Now, in that code, dependent on what the numbers and the letters are, depend on whether it's homozygous or heterozygous or normal. So homo is basically a red, which is basically 2 of the genes. So where you'd have got one from your mum and one from your dad. So that's 2 genes. Heterozygous is basically 1. So in that specific whatever gene that we're looking at, you've got 1 that could be from your mum and it could be from your dad. So without them getting tested, you won't know. Or it could be green, it could be normal. So these are results that basically came from one company. So there's a few different ways that you can get results when you get your DNA. Now, this is pretty much what you get. So when you get your raw DNA, so this is the raw data. So this is all of the different codes. This is basically your test results. And then dependent on the codes will depend on whether you get you're fine, you've got actually it's normal. So all the greens are normal. And the red, all the amber, oh, it's not amber, it's yellow, is basically, so these ones is that one of my children, I can't remember whose report this is, but one of my children have got 1 of this specific COMT gene, one of this one here, and then VDR, they've got 2, MAOA, they've got 2, so it's red, so they're having 2 of those genes. MTRR, they've got 1, I think this is Leon's because Nathan's got 2 MTHFR. And then MTHFR A1298C, so you've probably seen A1298C and then C677T, so they're 2 different. So this is Leon's, I know it is because he's got green on here. He has only got 1 of the A1298C gene here, whereas he has got 2 showing of others. Now, when you get these kind of reports, you do end up getting a little bit of verbiage, which basically talks about, you know, what that means. Now, I'm not going to go into massive detail about what it means, because I personally think that lifestyle, you can basically change the way that the gene expression is through lifestyle. And the reason that I say this, and I am going to go into some of this, but I'm not going to go into massive detail tonight. The reason I say that is by following the Coming Alive formula, we are seeing people get massive turnaround by making small changes that make a massive difference. Now, when I spoke to Trace Elements Lab, and I spoke to the main person in the UK who sees all of my hair tests and sees what we do with the kids, I said to her, I said, it's really interesting because, you know, obviously she knows I did the research study. She knows the results of, you know, 95% of the kids having heavy metal toxicity. And I said to her, it's really interesting. Every single person I've tested has got either MTHFR, COMT, MAOA, or MTRR. So any of these genes expressing, which can affect methylation and detoxification. And so I was having this conversation. She said, yeah, and isn't it interesting that actually they're getting results in terms of healing. She said, because you're doing it the right way, you're helping their body. Whereas a lot of people kind of go at things a backward approach. They go at it, they do it with parasites as well. So they do it with like gut issues, is they go, oh, I've got a parasite overload, I'm going to do a parasite cleanse. And that'll be the first thing they do. Or they'll look at it and they'll go, I've got MTHFR, I need to do this, and this. And they'll do this, and this, and get nowhere and not get any results because they haven't dealt with the root cause of the issue of what's going on in the body, which is why I'm so passionate about our approach, because we know that we're getting results and we know that we're getting to the root cause. And as a byproduct of actually following this journey, you're also going to be helping the gene mutations, because a lot of it, of what the body needs, is actually lifestyle. So lifestyle changes. So I'll come back to this slide in a little while. This is another report that basically you can get based on DNA, like raw data. So once you have your raw data, and I'm going to do a separate video on my website, probably in a week or so. So if you're watching this before, then feel free just to shoot an inquiry message through the website on comingalive.co.uk. But in the meantime, I'm going to record some videos on how you can convert your raw data into these reports. So there's 2 or 3 different sites that you can use that basically talks about the gene function, what happens if the gene isn't working properly. Now, the reason I wanted to show you this one is this is Leon's, and Leon reacted to something that gets put in your arm or your leg, and I'm not going to mention words because I could end up getting taken down. And look at this. So it's this specific gene here affects detoxification, and I'm going to let you read this bit that I'm hovering over because I'm not going to do this. So detoxifies, yes. And he's got 2 out of 2 of the genes, and he reacted to the things that you put in your arms and your legs. Isn't that interesting? Same with this one. It's to do with toxins and glutathione, and it's detoxification. So basically, the gene mutations generally affect detoxification, neurotransmitter levels, and methylation. So why am I so passionate about the Coming Alive formula and the fact that we're getting results is those people that follow our advice, not just from removing metals and balancing minerals and healing the gut, but also lifestyle choices. So removing the stress, but also following our food advice are getting results. Those people who aren't following that food advice are not getting results. And the reason for that is because it affects either methylation, detoxification, or neurotransmitter levels. So why are we getting results? Inadvertently, what we're doing is helping lots of these gene mutations without you even realizing that it's helping the gene mutations, which I think is really amazing. So basically, if we look at, I'm just going to share, I'll come back to these slides in just a second. If we look at MTHFR as an example, and I talk about this a lot, and it's one, the reason I talk about it a lot is one, both of my children have got an MTHFR gene expressing, and B, I think some of the information out there actually is not really great. Even on the CDC website, it, same old, it says that that there isn't any evidence to prove that this has an effect. Well, the interesting thing is I'm sat on evidence of hair reports, of radionic scans, and also DNA tests that link MTHFR, COMT, MAOA, all to issues with children with lots of different labels. And I know it doesn't stop at children with neurological issues, because we've had lots of people, whether it be asthma, IBS, IBD, Crohn's, epilepsy, neurological, as in disorders, learning difficulties, and they all have things in common. And so there is evidence, there really is, and there is actually scientific studies, and mine will also be on there very, very soon. So I do question why things like this aren't talked about. Now, do I believe everybody needs to go out and get a DNA test? No, I don't, because I do know that our journey will help. However, I do also think when people are sat with a piece of paper, or not with a piece of paper, but with a screenshot that gives you this knowledge, you've got two choices. You can either sit and freak out and go, I've got MTHFR. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Or you can go, okay, so I've got one of the MTHFR genes, which means that my detoxification pathways probably, they're not open as much as somebody without it would be. The fact of the matter is probably over 80% of the world nowadays have got one MTHFR gene or more. Which then means that mercury, arsenic, whatever, could be trapped in their body. So, the fact of the matter is you can go, oh my God, freak out. Oh, I've got 1, 2, 3, I've got 3 reds, and I've got all of these yellows, and I've got all these dirty genes, and oh my gosh, my life is over. Or you can go, this is really empowering actually, because I know now, and I am going to do a separate webinar going into detail on all of them and these, because there's just too much for one. I wanted to do an intro basically tonight and just cover off how lifestyle can affect gene mutations. But for those of you that are interested in learning much more, I will go into more detail. Most people don't have this data, so it's almost pointless telling you what they all mean. But I am going to go into more detail as the weeks and months go on, so that I can provide that support for people. But where I'm going with this is you do have two choices. You can sit and freak out and go, oh my gosh, I've got all these things wrong with me. Or you can go, okay, so if my body has this specific gene that actually means a specific function is not working properly, I'm now empowered to make some really wise choices about what I put in my body and how I live my life. Because actually we have proved that through lifestyle changes, so through diet, through nutrition, through exercise, through using like the body scans and other things, that actually you can affect the way that the gene expresses. Now, I know lots of people have, different views on this, but there's lots of things that we can do to support our bodies. And that to me is the most important part in this, is what can we do to actually help our bodies moving forward, rather than freaking out at the fact that, oh my gosh, you know, I've got all of these reds, which means, you know, my body doesn't function properly. So if we look at MTHFR as an example, so MTHFR is given an instruction to the body, and it's to do with enzyme production, to do with basically MTHFR, which affects the body's ability to convert folic acid into the natural form of folate, and also the body's ability to process amino acids. Also can affect protein and lots of other things. Now, having the MTHFR gene mutation can affect the homocysteine levels in the blood. So some practitioners will do homocysteine blood tests to see if homocysteine is high, rather than doing any kind of DNA testing, because from that they could probably see that somebody may have an MTHFR gene. Now, with MTHFR, it can affect all sorts of things. It can affect cardiovascular disease, blood clots, stroke, heart attacks, depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, leukemia, chronic pain, fatigue, nerve pain, and nerve disorders. And basically, it's affecting methylation and detoxification. And again, I could do an entire hour just on methylation and just on detoxification, but I physically don't have the time to go through every single one on, you know, a very, very short Zoom. So tonight is really an introduction. But moving forward, I want to make sure that we can talk about, you know, go into more depth on different topics. So I could do one on just MTHFR, I can do one on just COMT, one on MAO, one on detoxification and opening detoxification pathways. There is lots to talk about here, but what I want people to understand is that the Coming Alive journey 100% will help gene expression. And the reason for that is because we are helping the body remove toxins, remove the things that are basically stored in the body. Now, if you've got a gene that is expressing that affects detoxification and methylation, the body is going to store toxins. So if we go even back to these, so this is storing toxins. Look, we've got one here. This again affects like different drugs. But if I go back, oh, I've not got the other screenshot I wanted to show you. Let me just see if I can scroll up here. Yeah, well, all of these affect detoxification. All of these affect neurotransmitters, and these affect methylation up to here. So you can see the 3 different things that it affects. So if the body is struggling with detoxification, what happens? Exactly what we're seeing, and I'm going to see if I've got it on here. So if the body is struggling to detoxify, these, remember, this was Nathan's hair report the first time we did his hair report. His arsenic levels appeared to be in the reference range, but even at this level is enough arsenic to actually destroy the gut lining. I'm going to repeat that. Even at this level, even over 0.04 is enough to destroy the gut lining. This is 0.09. Now, even despite all of these levels in his first hair report being here, when we started to follow our detoxification program, this is how much heavy metals were actually stored in Nathan's body. Severely toxic levels of arsenic stored in his body. And that's huge. So arsenic went sky high, mercury went much higher, aluminium went higher. And actually in one of his previous reports, I think it might have been Leon, cadmium even went higher. So if the body is struggling to detoxify, what happens? The toxins get stored in your kidney, in your liver, in your spleen, your brain, basically any soft tissue that it can find, it stores in your body. So why, when, you know, people look at MTHFR, and some people will go, you've got MTHFR, take methylated B vitamins, and that's pretty much what they say, and that's your answer apparently to everything. Now, lots of different practitioners will say lots of different things, but the reason why I know we're getting results is because if you have gene expressions that affect methylation, detoxification, and the neurotransmitters, excuse me, and you've got heavy metal exposure, we've got to get the heavy metals out. It's the same when people know they've got leaky gut, and they're trying to get rid of parasites. Until you've dealt with the toxins, you're not going to help anything else. And we've seen this like proof in the pudding on our research study. We've seen it in action. So same with leaky gut. You know, if you go down the route of let me just try and get rid of parasites, parasites feed off heavy metals. You can see this is all intertwined so closely that, you know, with leaky gut, if you're not getting rid of the heavy metals, you're not going to heal the gut. You know, with gene expression, if we've not healed if we've not got rid of the metals, you know, and we know that the body struggles to detoxify, you're going to have a problem. So this is really important, because what we know with these different gene expressions is that 100% the body is going to be struggling. And this is the common denominator with what we're seeing in people with heavy metal toxicity. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly talk through a couple of things. I just want to do it in the right order. Give me just 2 seconds. Should we talk about first MTHFR? Right, yeah, I'm going to talk about MTHFR just shortly. So with MTHFR, the things that we are really careful of food-wise are sugar, which if you are on the Coming Alive journey, then you will have already removed sugar, gluten, cow's dairy, corn, and soya. And the irony is we recommend that without even talking about gene mutations. Whereas if you speak to different gene experts, they will give you the same advice, because it affects inflammation. You know, all of those different foods affect inflammation. If the body's already inflamed, you want to remove those foods out of your diet. Now with MTHFR, it can affect so many different diseases, illnesses. It can affect Alzheimer's, asthma, autism, bipolar, bladder cancer, blood clots, breast cancer, chemical sensitivity, chronic fatigue, Down syndrome, epilepsy, fibromyalgia, gastric cancer, glaucoma, heart murmurs, high blood pressure, irritable bowel syndrome, leukemia, male infertility, migraines, multiple sclerosis, nitrous oxidate toxicity, Parkinson's disease, schizophrenia, strokes, thyroid cancer, unexplained neurological disease, vascular dementia, miscarriages, placental abruption, postpartum depression, preeclampsia, cleft palate, spina bifida, tongue tie, so many different things. So many different things. Now, the reason for a lot of them is because when you've got a dirty MTHFR gene, the methylation cycle is disturbed. It affects antioxidant production. It affects the brain chemistry. It affects detoxification, cell repair, energy production, your immune response, inflammation, and so many other things. So by following the Coming Alive formula, which I skipped past, we're removing foods that affect imbalances, we're removing toxic products, we're removing metals, we're rebalancing minerals, we're rebalancing the body from stress and trauma, and we're relining the gut and helping with parasites, worms, and bacteria. and then we're regenerating cells and doing reflex integration, and we're going around the circle again. Now, by us doing this formula, inadvertently, we are helping people that have got different gene mutations, which is why I truly believe we are getting the results that we are getting. And when the lady at Trace Elements turned around to me and said, yeah, because you're doing it the right way, you know, you're focusing on what's going on inside the body, and you help healing the body from the inside out. You're not focusing on the label per se, you're focusing on what that has then done to the body and dealing with the root cause of the issues. And that's what we believe in. Now, the interesting thing is, if you go to a doctor, a mainstream doctor, and talk about any of these gene expressions, you will be told that there is no evidence about the fact that this affects any of those conditions. And I'm very much an evidence-based practitioner. If anyone wants to call me out on that, I'm happy. And I probably should have put it in this slide. I'll do it in the next video that I do. Put loads of different scientific research studies in there, because there are totally are information on these different gene mutations. Now, if we go to which one should we go to next? COMT. Now, this gene can affect sleep challenges. It can affect people that are workaholics. It can affect issues with estrogen, just trouble winding down, which I know is a lot of children that were on my research study. What else can it affect? Yeah, so inability to sleep, weak memory, difficulty maintaining focus, which is where people end up getting an ADHD diagnosis. It can affect dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter. It can affect so many things. Yeah, and also stress, which we talk about a lot on the program. I'm gonna go through, which one we're going to talk about next. We'll do MAO. We'll do MAO. I'm just going to talk about the microbiome first, because this is really important. So if we have got dirty genes, and we know that we've got methylation, and we've got detoxification issues, and we've got neurotransmitter issues, think about what I always say about the gut-brain connection. So if the gut connects to the brain and the gut connects with neurotransmitters, it's really important that we're not putting inflammatory foods into our bodies. Because if we're putting inflammatory foods into our bodies, yet again, if we think about the story that I tell of Blob the bacteria to the kids, and some of you might be watching this that don't know this story, but essentially I share a story with the children around Blob the bacteria, Pete the parasite, Willy the worm, and who else do I have? Yasmin the yeast, I think I call her. And the thing is, you know, when you've got all of those things going on in your gut and you're then putting something in your mouth which is inflammatory, you are feeding all of those things in your gut. So we know that pretty much what I tell you for metals and mineral imbalances is exactly the same as what we tell you in terms of lifestyle choices for many of these different gene mutations. So it all goes hand in hand. Now, the other one that I'm just going to talk about briefly is, yeah, we'll talk about MAOA. So with MAOA, again, we're looking at different enzyme productions, and this is to do with neurotransmitters and dopamine. Now, this kind of, you know, helps your body with your stress response, but obviously if something isn't working properly, it's going to affect your ability to feel calm. And again, a lot of children feel like this. So I think a lot of emphasis is put on MTHFR, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that is the only gene mutation actually affected by a child. If we go back to this, like Leon actually had 2, which means he got one from me and one from his dad, MAOA, the R297R, which means he's got 2, a double mutated gene. Now, people with this gene mutation, I'm just going to go back to the slide. People this gene mutation could have been diagnosed with ADHD. They might have had major depression in the family, or alcohol issues, addicted to carbs. They may breathe faster when they're stressed, might take them longer to slow down. They can focus for a long time. That's definitely me. I keep going and keep going. So he's definitely, we know he's got that one from me. And in terms of health conditions related to this gene, again, it could be addictions, whether it be alcohol or nicotine or other things, mainly alcohol and nicotine, ADHD, Alzheimer's, personality disorder, anxiety, autism, bipolar, depression, fibromyalgia, migraines, again, schizophrenia, SAD disease, so seasonal affective disorder. That can affect all of those things. Now, the other thing is what affects, so a lot of people talk about glutathione. Now, I have used glutathione patches, and I need to do a separate thing to do with the light patches that we have used with Nathan. But basically, you can have, with MAOA, chronic stress is a huge issue, and physical stress, because it can affect blood sugar, yeast overgrowth, leaky gut. So it affects all of these things. So again, look at what we're doing on the Coming Alive journey. We're making sure we deal with stress. We're making sure we deal with sugar imbalance. We're dealing with bacterial overgrowth, yeast overgrowth. So we're dealing with all of that. And guess what? Our bodies then are expressing differently. So the MAOA gene that can be affected with, chronic stress, if we're working on that, and chronic inflammation, we're working on all of that emotional stress, we're working on the foods, it's going to make a difference to how this gene is expressing. And glutathione, I'm going to do a whole separate chat on, because you need to get the basics in first. And I know most people are still on the first parts of this journey with removing the metals. And that is really important. So I will, I stand firm that the formula that we follow at Coming Alive actually is saving so many health conditions, because it is solving some of the issues that we know have been caused by some of these gene mutations. It's removing the metals out of the body, it's rebalancing minerals, and it's also relining the gut. And that is basically what we need to do with all of these different mutations. So what else did I want to cover tonight? Yeah, let's talk about B vitamins. So lots of people will talk about taking vitamin B6, B9, B12. So just to be super clear, B9 is folic acid or folate. So when you see folic acid is the synthetic form of folate. Folate is your natural form of folic acid. Now, online and on certain websites, which I'm not going to name, which I might have already named, which was epic fail, some websites will tell you that there is no evidence that folic acid is an issue with MTHFR. Well, I kind of disagree. And that's okay, because we don't all have to have the same opinion. Folic acid is synthetic, and our bodies should be able to convert folic acid to folate. But when our body is struggling, like with MTHFR and other methylation issues, it can't do that, which is why we recommend using the natural form of folate. And that is discussed by several methylation experts. Yet on certain websites, you will be told that there is no evidence to support the fact that folic acid is a concern for people with MTHFR, which is a little bit worrying. So I would stick with the advice that natural health practitioners give you, because they are normally right when it comes down to this. And they've often got more knowledge than a general practitioner. And I'm not saying this to dismiss medical practices. I'm just saying this is more specialist work that many general practitioners haven't got even knowledge of. So I've had many patients recently who have come to me and they've been prescribed folic acid because their folate, their B9 is low. But actually, because we've tested their MTHFR, I've personally recommended not taking folic acid and making sure they're having a natural form of folate. We make sure that any B vitamins are methylated, because of the fact that if the body is struggling with methylation, then clearly it's going to struggle to convert into the methylated form. So really, what I wanted to cover tonight was just a little bit about an introduction to some of the genes, but more importantly, I wanted to cover how lifestyle can affect gene mutations. So many people have asked me about the scans of how can the MTHFR gene show as red on the scan, and then later on it show as green. And that is, again, to do with the fact that the body is either expressing the gene or not expressing the gene. And things that can affect the gene expression are things like chemical toxicity, metal toxicity, stress, certain foods, inflammation, etc. So if we're dealing with all of those things, the way that the gene expresses absolutely can be different. However, if you're not aware and you're not doing things to help your body, like we were 2 years ago, we had no idea about gene mutations or metal toxicity or anything else before we started, doing every single training program going to help my own children. I had no idea that Nathan had all of that trapped heavy metals in his body. And since then, we've obviously seen hundreds of children's hair tests. And when they redo their hair tests on the second or their third hair test, do we see huge amounts of heavy metals coming out of their body? So I truly believe that lifestyle can affect the way that genes express. I'm a firm believer of it. I'm a firm believer of getting to the root cause. I've spoken to many people that work in lifestyle medicine who are very knowledgeable. So lots will be speaking at the Lifestyle Medicine Summit in October. And they all talk about the fact that lifestyle can affect health outcomes. And I truly believe it. So you can absolutely 100% go and get DNA tested, because it would empower you with understanding what was going on. In part 2 of this, which I probably will do next week, I'm going to go into way more detail on the specifics of different gene mutations. What I can't do is go into individual on a YouTube, because that's really difficult, because everyone's got different things going on for them. But what I want to make sure that people are aware of is what different symptoms you can get, but what you'll notice is what I've discussed tonight is many of the symptoms display the same symptoms of that of heavy metal poisoning. So why? Well, if you've got these gene mutations that affect detoxification and methylation, your body's going to store toxins, right? So if your body's storing toxins, guess what? You have many of the symptoms of the gene expression. It's all linked. You know, we could look at leaky gut symptoms, heavy metal symptoms, and gene mutation symptoms, and you could literally put them all together. And the irony is then you map them against ADHD or autism or any other neurological issues, seizures, etc., and you get the same symptoms. So deal with the root cause, and then the body becomes healthier. Deal with the root cause, and the body becomes healthier. And that's what we truly believe. And that's what we're seeing in many, many, many results with our patients. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about tonight is chemicals, chemical toxicity, chemicals in general. So I know that Nathan has the MAOA. I know he has COMT. I know he has MTHFR. I know he has MTRR. Excuse me. He's got 17 different gene mutations, has my little Nathan. And we know that his body struggles with toxins. So I wanted to tell you a little story about where Nathan had certain setbacks. Now, some of you have followed our journey for a long time and knew that we went on a massive healing journey. He got better. He went into school, and school couldn't believe the difference in him. And within a couple of weeks of being back to school, Nathan started to switch and go back to where he was. Now, the first time this happened, I found out he'd been drinking tap water at school, which we don't drink because we all know that tap water has got toxins in. And Nathan's body can't expel toxins. So that happened, and we had a bit of a setback, and I could tell with his gut that there were issues. And so I ended up having to, really work hard with him to help his body. Then we were fine again, and we came to go through this little cycle. I think there was a holiday involved or something, and then he went back to school again. He was fine for the first week. It was coronavirus, I think, had hit, and that's when we started using different chemicals and things. And within a couple of weeks, he was getting a little bit agitated again. He wasn't great. Then we had, I'm trying to think of the timescales. Then we had lockdown, and he was fine. He was absolutely brilliant at home. Now, last week we go back to school. Nathan's been looking so healthy, so healthy, because at home I don't have toxins in my house. I have an air purifier. I don't use toxic cleaning products. I make my own out of white vinegar and oils and water. He eats really well, as you all know. We do detoxify. We use zeolites. We use fulvic acid. We put the right minerals in our body. And generally, he's been really healthy. We have not visited a doctor's in over 15 months. Now, he goes back to school. Within a week, last Friday, I start seeing his eyes going black again. Now, some people said to me, it's really worrying that, someone can go backwards so quickly. But if they're taking in the toxins, it kind of makes sense. So I basically Googled today what cleaning chemicals are being used at the school, and bearing in mind they're spraying down desks and stuff like that a couple of times during the day. And I looked at the ingredients, and they can affect eye issues, and actually they are classed as a neurotoxic. So I obviously was like, great, that's like putting a child with a nut allergy into a bowl of nuts. Because if you know that they've got a gene mutation, you know that their body's ability, is not, detoxification is an issue. You know that they're going to have a problem. So Nathan's eyes were swelling up. His face was more swollen. He had like dark bags under his eyes, and he started looking like he was getting some kind of a sty. And I knew it. I mean, I scanned him last night and it came up with chemical toxicity, and I just knew that there was something. And of course, it makes sense that the only different place that he's gone is school, and they're using chemicals in schools. So I guess what I wanted to share tonight, and I said that I would cover it, is just be really mindful that everything you're doing at home, so all of the things that the body needs, so we make sure that we don't take folic acid, we use natural forms of folate, we we remove sugar, gluten, cow's dairy, corn, so all the things that I said. We reduce stress, we reduce chemical toxicity in the home, we have an air purifier, we reduce stress. So you're doing all those things at home, and then we send them to school, and clearly for some kids it is the stress gets increased, but then the toxins in schools, they are absolutely there without a doubt, because they're definitely not using non-toxic chemicals, and they're in an environment that A, may be more stressful, but B, is more toxic. So when you have a child that has either had heavy metal toxicity, and whether they've got a gene expression or not, it could affect them. So watch the signs. Look for swelling in the face. Look for that under the eyes, like the dark patches under the eyes. Look for swelling. You will see it. You will totally see it. So what can you do? So I mean, this is just a real short snippet tonight. What can you do to A, either find out about gene mutations, and B, what are we going to do next? So honestly, personally, if you've got heavy metal toxicity, I can almost guarantee that you've got one, if not more, of those gene mutations. So following the lifestyle advice, removing the metals and balancing the minerals, you'll probably find your body has got a better chance of functioning properly. Now, if you are somebody that has got DNA results, we can go through them. If you're somebody that doesn't have DNA results, you could do a DNA test, and feel free to contact me, and I'll give you advice in terms of what to do if you've got them already. You could get a DNA test, and what it would do is give you one of those reports or both of those reports, and it would tell you exactly which genes are mutated and what they affect. Now, I think it's quite empowering. I think some people go at it the wrong way. I think some people look at it and they go at it as, let me deal with this, but we're not dealing with the root cause, and then get really wrapped up in this rabbit hole of looking at the label and what can I eat and what can I not eat, and freaking out of what it affects, and is this going to affect my life and everything else. Or you can use it as an empowering tool to know that actually lifestyle can affect all of the health issues that you've had to date. And I know what I would prefer. I would prefer to use it as an empowering tool rather than a tool that's going to freak the hell out of me and make me nervous. So that's my suggestion. If you want to get a DNA test done, go ahead, and I can, obviously next week I'm going to show how to actually convert the data. I'll do that in a pre-recorded video and just put it onto YouTube and my website. And then the next session that I do on gene mutations, I'm going to really go into reports in much more detail and share what they mean, how the Coming Alive journey supports it, and what extra supplementation that you may well need. I don't go carte blanche approach on this stuff, because again, we very much focus on hair tests and what's showing and what the results are showing us. So that really was a basic intro. I am just going to come out of this and see people are saying yeah, so people are asking for links. Here's what I'm going to do. So I am going to gather all of the different gene information with scientific studies Now, I can't see who's asked for this, and I don't know if this will go into the chat when this actually gets published. What I'm going to do is I'll post it in the Coming Alive group. I'll also put it on my website, and I'll put it in the comments of this video in the next few days. So I will do that, I promise. The other thing, yes, it does affect sleep 100%. If the body can't methylate properly, and if the body can't detoxify properly, and it's storing toxins, it's affecting your kidney, your liver, it's affecting all sorts. So that then absolutely has a knock-on effect on your sleep. And it's not just MTHFR, it's all different genes. Now, a few people said, am I covering this gene or that gene or this gene? Tonight, I just wanted to talk general about gene mutations and highlight some of the gene mutations that potentially could come on a DNA test. But I will do part 2 of this for those of you that want to get into the nitty gritty and do a lot more detail on it. And in there, I will also share some of the scientific papers. But I will post the links as well. Okay, Tammy, yeah, I can see it's you. Would love the links for the evidence. Yeah, 100%. So when I do part 2, I'm just reading comments. When I do part 2, I'll put some scientific evidence in. I was told that there's no evidence that the mutation impacts any of these conditions. Right. What? Yeah. And I just have to smile. So here's my take on it. There is also apparently no evidence that heavy metal toxicity can have the same issues as ADHD or autism or anything else for that matter. I can tell you I'm sitting here with the evidence, and the evidence is backed up in many places. So I'm sat here with the evidence that shows heavy metal toxicity with many different issues, from IBS to epilepsy to seizures to neurological issues. I have the evidence and I am publishing it on PubMed. That's my personal evidence, but I know that there is also other evidence. If a gene mutation affects detoxification, and we've got evidence to show about heavy metal toxicity, the two go hand in hand. So how anybody wouldn't listen to that just beggars belief. I just don't understand it, because it links. So I'm going to let you make your own interpretation as to why people wouldn't want this knowledge out there. That's for you to go and decipher. Why would people not want this knowledge? I have no idea, because it is changing people's lives. The amount of people that have said, I feel like I'm coming alive, or I feel like my child is coming alive, because they're cleaning their body up, is unbelievable. Honestly, if I had £1 for everyone that told me that, and how many times they've told me that, I would be a very rich lady. So there is definitely evidence. But yeah, there are some NCBI research papers that have been done, but there's definitely on toxicities and different conditions. And actually, if we know that gene mutations affect different detoxification pathways, then there is the evidence. People cannot say it doesn't link, because it 100% links. Okay, if we get a DNA test, should we ask for the ones you mentioned or more? Right, so if you just do a normal DNA swab, the actual raw data, so if you go on like Ancestry, for example, you can actually download your raw data. And once you've got your raw data, I should have put that in here. Once you've got your raw data, you basically can upload it and you can get those reports that I've shared. So what I will do in a video, and I will try and do it by Friday, and I'll upload it to the Coming Alive group and website. So if you go back to the site in 2 or 3 days time onto comingalive.co.uk, I will do a whole page on gene mutations and DNA testing, with where you can get the different tests from, pros and cons of each, and then how you upload your raw data to get the reports once you've got your results back. you basically go on to like settings, depending on which company you use. You go on to settings, you download the raw data, and then you upload the raw data to basically get what they mean, or I can read them. So yeah, so I will put that in the group by, what's the date today? Friday, like that 16th, 17th, 18th, Friday the 19th of March. So if you go back to the website by then, or go into the group, I will make sure that there is a separate page just on this of how you can get it. But like I say, I don't believe everybody needs to go out and go and get tested purely and simply because I know our formula helps. But I do also think it is quite empowering. And actually, if you look at, let me just go back to it. If you look at this kind of could be really handy for you to know in years and months to come, of having evidence for how your body reacts to certain things. And I think you all know what I'm talking about. So, you know, it could be really good for you to understand and know, like, I know my children had certain reactions to certain things, and I know why, because of their detoxification pathways. So they won't necessarily take it on MTHFR, but actually there's evidence to show these different gene mutations can affect different things. Yeah, I think you will understand what I'm talking about. I'm just going to move on. Then, you know, it could be good for you to have that kind of evidence moving forward. And it's also, like I say, it can be empowering, because if you know what your body's struggling with, there's always a solution, or I believe there's always a solution. Let me just check. Let me check. Questions, 1 second. Pleasure. Okay, I'm just checking questions. I think we are good. If anybody has got any questions, post them in the group or into the event chat. And what I'll do is, in part 2 of this, I will go into a lot more detail. You are so welcome. We are so passionate about, you know, people getting healthy and people healing, and people truly coming alive. And yeah, this is so much more than neurological issues now. We started with wanting to help children who were really struggling, and we're getting children speaking that were nonverbal. We're getting children that had memory processing issues. We're getting children come out of special school. We're getting children off epilepsy meds. We're getting adults off epilepsy meds. We're getting children reversing colitis and Crohn's diagnoses, you know, and it's all through removing metals, healing leaky gut, lifestyle, nutrition, removing stress, and potentially adding things like, you know, methylated B vitamins and some other things as well. But it was all related in the journey that we're going on. And I truly believe it will help many people. I can link so many different health issues to all of this stuff. So yeah. Awesome. So whatever questions you've got, post in the group, and then on the second part of this, I will really delve deep for you, and I will go into this in much more detail. But thank you for joining. Hopefully it was useful, and we will talk again soon. Take care. Good night.